Okay, so I think we're going to get started. So for those of you who have just joined, or maybe you're not familiar with the Military Trailblazer office hours, my name is Bill Kuehler, and what we're going to do today is actually walk through what we call one of our workshops. Now, normally for Military Trailblazer office hours, what we like to cover is just, we keep the agenda open. If you have any questions, concerns, issues at work, you're trying to figure something out, you're stuck on a challenge, whatever it is, this is just a forum that you can actually join where you can ask your question live. We'll share screens. We'll go into a Salesforce org. We'll try to build out whatever it is that you're having trouble with and try to get you an answer live on the call. Now for today, like I mentioned, we're actually going to go through a workshop where we're actually going to go through a use case and actually build it out together. Now, at this stage, it might be too late if you haven't done this already, and you can just kind of follow along. But what we're going to do is we have a brand new Trailhead playground that we've created. If you haven't done so already, you would want to have installed the prerequisite package, which the link was in the email and it was posted, and we've also put it into the chat here within Zoom as well. So if you have any issues with that, maybe I'll give it one more minute if anybody wants to ask a question there. Otherwise, we're gonna kind of kick things off. So I'll just take 37 seconds. Does anybody have any questions or issues with getting the package installed or setting up the playground? Okay, so when we talk about our use case for today, I'm going to go back to the slide here. So the use case is you want a way that when your users log into Salesforce, that you can either present them with some kind of information or maybe collect some kind of information from them before they're allowed to log in. Now, use cases for this, there's a variety of things you can do with this. It might be, setting up some type of multi-factor authentication. You might want to present them, think about like a updated terms and conditions, make sure you accept type logic. And in our use case, again, don't get hung up on the use case. This is just an example so we can build this out and you can see how the mechanics of it work. But our use case is going to be, as a company, we have a company picnic that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And we want to make sure that as everybody logs in, that we collect certain information like, are they going? How many guests are they bringing? And then, for a DJ, what is their favorite band, right? So that's the basics of what we're going to try to capture from our users. Again, is that a legitimate use case? I don't know, maybe not, but just to go through the mechanics of it, that's what we're going to walk through today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to actually the other thing I want to make sure too is that if you haven't done so already, if you've installed the package, you want to make sure that you go to your flow screen and you actually deactivate the flow that's part of the package. So I wanted to make sure that if you had a drop or, for whatever reason, you just had a question or you couldn't get something to work, we don't have time to go through it on this call today, the complete working solution is included in that prerequisite package. So if you haven't done so, you just want to make sure that you go into flows and actually just deactivate that. And just to kind of show you, if you're not familiar, we would just go up into setup within your playground. Over on the quick find here, we're going to search for flow. And you should see the collect info at login flow here. So if it's showing as active, what you would do is just hit the drop down here, go to view details and versions, and then you can just click that deactivate link that we have right here. Okay. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to get started, and I'm going to try to go through this pretty slow. But if I'm going too fast, or if you have questions as we're going through this, by all means, feel free to interject, and we'll take a pause and go through your question. All right. So first thing that we're going to do is create a new flow. Okay, so from the flows tab that we have over here, the flows option, we're going to click on new flow. And in this case, because we're going to be presenting information to the user and potentially getting feedback from the user, we're going to want to have a screen-based flow. Okay, so that's what's selected by default. So we're going to make sure that's checked and then click next. Okay, now this is a matter of personal preference. Do you want it to do the auto layout or the free form? I'm going to stick with the free form for right now. And when you click on that, you should be in your, a blank flow that you can start building. All right. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check to see if existing records exist, right? So in other words, we only want to collect this information from a user one time. And if they've already provided it, we don't want to do it any longer. Okay. We don't want to keep prompting them every time they log in for information that they've already provided. So the object that we're going to check to see if it exists is actually included as part of this prerequisite package that we installed. So if you go to your app launcher and you go to the Salesforce Mill Office Hours app, you'll see that there's a tab there called Collected Info. Okay, so nothing too elaborate here. This is just it's got an auto number as its name field. It's got an event, which is a text field that we'll be able to populate with some event details or some information. We have the user, so that represents what user actually responded. And then whatever the responses are, we're going to concatenate that into a string that we're going to put into a column called response. Okay, so going back to our requirements here, the first thing that we're going to do is create a get records that's going to check that collected info object to see if they've already responded for this particular information that we're trying to collect. So from our flow, I'm going to create a get records. We're going to drag that over here and just keep the naming collected info. So we'll just say check to see if the user has already responded. And you'll notice that as we go through this, my labels, I try to keep them as verbose as possible. That way, when you're building these things, when you have a lot of complexity, when you come back 6 months from now, you can kind of follow along and things still make sense, as opposed to say get info. You know what I mean? That's not as clear as check to see if the user has already responded, right? So in any case, we're going to go and we're going to get all records from the collected info object where the user is equal to the current user that's logged in. Now, when we say the current user that's logged in, you'll notice that we have some special global variables at the bottom here, right? So the $user is the one that we want to grab, and we want to grab the ID from the current logged in user. All right, so you can select the ID field. So when you do it, that's what it should look like. User is equal to the current logged in user, or the $user.id, okay? And then the other condition that we're going to put in here, we only want to check the responses for this current thing that we're working on. So we're going to say where the event is equal to the 2021 company picnic. Okay, and then just to make sure that I got that right, so everything else, yeah, 2021 company picnic. Okay, and we only need to grab one record, right? So we just want to see if the current user on login has actually responded yet, and that's what this step is. So we'll click done, and we will connect to start. Okay. So just to take a quick pause, any questions there? All we're doing so far is just getting the responses to see if this user has already responded. So any thoughts, questions before I move forward?
Can you just go back to where you were editing it for a second?
Sure, yeah. There you go.
I couldn't get records to open.
When you say you can't get it to open, so if you click on it and drag it over into the workspace, does it not pop up with this screen here?
Yeah, I didn't drag it over. I'm sorry. So can you still leave that open for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Yes, that's the key with the non-auto layout. You actually have to click on the component and then drag it over. The auto layout, if you turn that on, it gives you a nice little interface where you can just click a plus sign and it will automatically open the thing up for you. It's pretty slick, but I prefer the non-auto.
So the labels check to see if user
has already responded. Yeah. Yeah. So the label, you can put whatever you like there. I just try to keep it as kind of verbose as possible for, so that when we look at this later, we can kind of understand what it's doing.
Object, collected info.
Okay. So we'll hold on this for another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll move on here. And keep in mind too, I'm going to be providing the recording of the call too. So if anybody gets stuck or you have to drop for whatever reason, you can always kind of come back and go through this at your own pace. All right, so user equals current logged in user, and then the event is equal to the 2021 company picnic. All right. All right, so are you okay if we move on?
I'm trying to get a screenshot. Yeah, because I'm...
quick question,
sure.
Bill, and anybody else, when you put in the value, type in 2021 company picnic and click done. When I reopen it, it's gone. I just see the 2021. It's dropping off the company page. Is anyone else experiencing that?
I am not.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep. But we can definitely, if that's an issue, once we get all done, we can kind of go back through that and just see what might be the issue there. We can let you share your screen and we can try to troubleshoot that. All right, so moving forward. So we check to see where we got the existing responses, and now we actually want to check to see if we found one. And we're going to do that through a decision block. Okay, so the way we do that, we grab our decision, we'll drag that over here. Then we're going to say, did we find an existing response? Question mark. We're going to say yes, existing response found, or the default outcome is going to be no, a response was not found. Again, trying to keep it verbose so that it's easy to follow the logic later. All right, so when we say yes, an existing response was found, the way that we know that is by checking that get that we did. We're going to say, is that get equal to null? And we want to say false here. So if it's not blank, that means we found the response. So let me just say that one more time. We know we found the response if the get that we did is not blank. Okay, so this pattern is null false. That's something that you're going to run into a lot when we talk about flows, just because that's how you check to see if the gets that you're doing are actually finding values. Okay. Any questions there before we move on? So did we find an existing response? Yes, we found it. And the way that we know we found it is that if that get is not blank. All right, so I'm going to click done there. And now we're going to connect the dots. All right. All right, now going back, the next thing that we're going to do is we want to get details about the current logged in user. Okay, so we need to check to see, or we essentially want to get some name and some other details about the user. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to grab another get records, and we're going to say find current logged in user. The object in this case is going to be the user, and I probably should just search for user. There we go. And we want to find all users where the user ID is equal to that same current logged in user, that $user.id. Okay, so that'll get us to our, and in reality, we probably don't need to do this step. I'm going to leave it in here for now. If we needed the first name, we probably could just have used that $user ID, but I'll leave it in there just so folks have it if you ever need to get a user based on some other field or not the current logged in user. All right, so we're going to connect our decision to this, and we're only going to do the rest of this logic if a response was not found. So that's the one we want to make sure that we connect here. All right, so if we kind of look at this, we say check to see if we have a response, check to see if we found one, and if we didn't, we're now going to start the logic to get the current logged in user and continue on. So any questions there?
Could you open their get records real quick? Thanks.
Yep. So again, this is probably an optional step. We probably don't need this, but like I said, we'll leave it in for now.
That's weird. Okay.
So get all users where the ID is equal to the current logged in user. And of course, there will only ever be one user where the IDs match. Okay. Any questions there? Okay. Now we get into the fun part. All right, so we'll go back here. The next thing that we're going to want to do now is actually build our screen. Okay, this is what's going to be presented to the user when they're logged in. All right, now there's a few things where we're going to break this up into individual pieces. So there's going to be the screen, and then there's going to be essentially 4 components that we're going to display on the screen. All right, so before we go into the details, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab my screen, and we're going to pull that down onto our canvas. And I'm going to give this a label here. Just call this something like collect info screen. And of course, that'll give you a nice API name there as well. And now we can actually start adding components onto the screen. And the first one that we're going to add, if you collapse the input components, we have one here that is a display text. So that's actually what I'm going to throw on here. So we'll throw some display text. I'm going to call this message to user, like that. And here you can actually just type in the message you want to be displayed at the top of the screen. So I'm going to say hi, and then I'm going to insert a resource. All right, so I'm going to grab the first name from that user that we grabbed. So we're going to say the find current user or the current logged in user, and then we're going to look for the first name. Of course, I clicked out of it. Let me try that again. So we want the user from find user, and if you just type in first name, you should be able to get it. So it should look something like this. So hi, first or find current logged in user dot first name. And then I'm just going to put in some random text here. You can put whatever you like. This is the not as important part, but we're going to say the company picnic is coming up. Please provide us some details. Okay, and that's going to be it for the text that we're going to put there. Now, just because with flows, if something catastrophic would happen, like I would accidentally close this tab or something else, every time I add a field to the screen, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to click done and I'm going to actually save. So the more we add to this flow before we save it, the bigger your risk is going to be. So I'm just going to connect that get records, connect it to my screen. And then before we go any further, I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to click save. So I'm going to call mine demo login flow, and I'm just going to save that. At least now, if I accidentally close my tab or my internet connection dies and I have to restart my computer or something like that, we know we're not going to lose all the work that we already did. All right, so now that it's saved, I'm going to just open that screen back up. All right. Anybody have any questions there as far as just creating the screen and putting that display text at the top? Okay, so go back to our presentation here. So we just did our kind of welcome message, the display text at the top. The next thing that we're going to do is actually ask them the first question, which is going to be, are they attending? Okay, so the way that we're going to do this, I'm actually going to go back to my input here, and we're going to grab a pick list. All right, so I'm going to just drag that pick list over here, and we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine attending ? As the label. And then just to make our lives easier later when we have to try to find the values of these and check the responses, for all the API names, for any question that I ask, I'm going to put question _. So that way it'll keep them all together. It'll reduce some confusion if you have some things that are named similarly, like attending ? Attending responses, like all this kind of stuff you have. Putting the question prefix there in the API name, that'll just make it easier to find later. Okay. This is going to be a required answer. They have to answer this question. The data type, as you see the options here, it's going to be a text-based data type. And like I said, it's going to be, the component's going to be a pick list. Now, this can seem confusing, but I promise you that it's not as confusing as you think after you go through it a couple of times. We need to give choices. Essentially, we want to be able to say either they're attending or they're not attending. And it's not as easy as just typing in attending and not attending. Right. So what we actually have to do here for our pick list is create a new resource. If you click in that field, you'll see that new resource plus sign pops up here. So if we click on that, the resource type that we're going to want to create is going to be a choice. Okay. So if you click on choice, you can kind of go through the fields from top to bottom here. And I'm going to say attending is the API name. The choice label, what's actually going to be displayed in the pick list, is going to be attending. The data type is going to be text, and the choice value is going to be attending. All right, so nothing too crazy there. It's just that we have to name this variable, which is the name is going to be attending. We have to give it a label for what's going to display in the pick list. That's going to be attending, and then the actual value of this is going to be of type text, and that's going to be attending as well. All right, and then we're going to do the exact same thing for not attending. So I'm going to click on that, the choice. I'm going to click new resource. I'm going to go to choice again, and then I'm just going to say API name is not attending, no spaces there, or else Salesforce will yell at you when you try to go through, or it'll take the spaces out. The label is going to be not attending, and then the data type, text, choice value, not attending. Okay, so now we have two choices as I click done here, attending and not attending. All right, so that piece I can see how you might get lost going through that. Any questions there? Anybody have any issues creating those choices, the attending and not attending choices? Okay, and somebody just give me a thumbs up. You can still hear me, right? Okay, thank you. You never know these days. All right, so that is our attending question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our presentation. So we just created our pick list. We created our two options, attending and not attending. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to want to ask the user how many guests are they going to be bringing to the picnic, right? So in this case, we're going to want to ask them a number question. So we're going to grab number, and we're going to pull that over under our attending question. And we're going to say number of guests, ? just like I did before, we're going to put question underscore at the beginning, just so that we can keep that together. We're going to say the default value is going to be 0, and decimal places is 0. We're not going to bring any half or quarter people. And then the other part here is the set component visibility. So what we want to do is we don't want to display this question to the user unless they've responded that they are attending. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand that set component visibility. We're going to change it from always to all conditions are met and the condition that we're going to put here is their question attending. So question attending equals attending. So I'll leave it up for a second just so you can see that. So we're going to select that first question. We're going to make sure that that is equal to attending. That's going to be our conditions for whether or not this number of guests is going to display. Okay. So I'll click done there. All right. Any questions there as far as the number of guests? I think that one's a little bit more, makes a little bit more sense compared to the pick list. So what I'm going to do is go back, all right, and we'll create our final component. This is going to be a text input in this case where we're asking them what their favorite band is, all right? So again, over here in our input components we have, one of them is text. So we're going to grab that and we're going to pull that over and we're going to say favorite band, question mark. Same thing like we did before. We're going to put that question underscore in front of the API name. The default value, we're not going to set a default value in this case, but we are going to do the same thing for the visibility. We're going to say we only want to show this if the question attending is equal to attending. Okay, so again, just like before, we don't want to show these questions if they're not even attending. All right, so I'll click done there. And once again, we'll pause for a second. Any questions on that step before we move on? Okay, so now that we have our screen, again, just to make sure that we're on the safe side, I'm going to click done here, and we're going to click save just to make sure that we save our progress just in case. And now that we've saved, the next thing that we're going to want to do now is they've entered all their answers in, and now depending on how they've answered, we either want to create a response that shows their answers, their details, favorite band, number of guests, and things, or we want to log a response that says that they're not even attending. All right, so before we can do that, we have to put another decision block in here. All right, so we're going to drag a decision block over, and we're going to say, are they attending, question mark. And we're going to say, yes, they are attending. And we're going to know that they're attending by the question attending is equal to attending, okay? And if I get a nickel for every time I say attending during this conversation. There you go. So that's, we're going to know they're attending as if they answered that question with the attending answer. Now, the default outcome, I don't like ever leaving that default outcome. So I always like to replace that with no, they are not attending, okay? And just like before, we're going to connect our screen now to that decision. All right, so give that a save, and I'll ask just once again, any questions on that piece? So to kind of summarize where we're at right now, the user logs in, we check to see if they've already given a response. If we haven't received a response, we're going to get the details about the user record. We're going to present them with a screen that says, hey, Bob, company picnic's coming up. Are you going to be attending? They say yes or no, or they're attending or not attending. They can provide the number of guests that they're going to have, what their favorite band is. And now we get to the point where we check their answers and we're going to do something based on their answers. All right. So the next step here is we actually have to create a variable. Okay. Now, what this is going to do, this is going to essentially concatenate everything together that we're going to put in that response field. And again, we're trying to keep this generic. So we just have a response text field that we're going to load this information into. But you could see how you could actually put, stuff in individual fields like attending, yes, no, number of guests would be a number field, favorite band could be a text field. But in our case, we're just going to string it all together and put it into a single response field. And we're going to do that by creating a variable. Okay. Now, just to, if you've been following along, let me actually just see if I can do this here from my presentation side. I'm going to go back to here and I'm just going to drop, I don't want to do that. I'm going to drop this into the chat just so that if you have questions with the, how the strings are concatenated, or if you just want to copy and paste it, if you used all the same names, you'll have that option there. So when we create this variable, we're going to, in our flow, we're going to click on the Manager tab over on the left here, and we're going to create a new resource. All right, and the new resource type is going to be formula, and we're going to give it an API name of attending response text, something like that. And the data type is going to be text. And like I said, if you've been kind of following along, you can paste in what I had there. But essentially, we're going to say, we're going to have a string attending with, make sure we have a space there. We're going to concatenate that. That's what that little ampersand is. The number of guests. So we wrap that into text because that number of guests is actually a number. And then we're going to concatenate that with another string here, which is, guests and my favorite band is. And then we concatenate that with the question from favorite band. Now, if you named your variable slightly differently, that's okay. If if you didn't paste this in and you want to kind of build this from scratch and you're trying to figure out how do I get to that favorite band answer, what I'll do is let me just delete that real quick, and I'll show you where we find that. So you can actually use this insert a resource field here, where we scroll down to question favorite band, click on that, and that'll actually insert that into here. So again, if you've used different names, you can actually just delete that little section here, and then just insert that question, based on however you named it. But in any case, once you're done with that, and actually, I don't know if I did the same names here, so I'm actually going to do that real quick for this one as well. So I'm going to delete that number of guests question here, and I'm going to insert that back in number of guests. There we go. And then when we're done that, I'm going to click done. All right, so now we have that variable. So any questions on creating that text-based variable or that formula? Again, if you do have questions, you can ask them now, or we can come back to them at the end if you like. All right, so now that we have that that variable created, we can actually do our two create records. So if they're attending or not attending, they're each going to be a separate create record step. So as we go into our flow, I'm going to go back to our elements tab here, and we're going to add in a create record step here. And we're going to say create response dash not attending. All right. So we're going to create a new record, and we actually are going to create one, and we want to use separate resources and literal values. So we're going to check that. And the object that we're going to create is this collected info record. That's that object that's part of the package that we installed. Now, a few fields. I think there's actually 3 fields that we're going to want to fill in. The first is going to be the event. So that we could just type in here 2021 company picnic. Okay, that's the event. So we just manually type in the event name. The user field is going to be equal to the current logged in user. And if you guys remember, that's going to be the $user global variable .id. Okay. And then finally, the response is going to be our formula. So we already did the hard work, concatenating everything together. So we should be able to just select that attending response text. Oh, actually, this is not attending, right? Okay, so scratch that. All we're going to do for the response on the not attending side is actually just use the text not attending. So we're just going to drop in that text value that we have. All right, so we're going to create records. This is for the not attending, and we're going to create one record of type collected info, where the event is equal to 2021 company picnic. The user is equal to that global current logged in user that's seeing this flow variable that we have there. And then the response is going to be not attending. And with that, I'll click done. Now, I'm immediately going to connect this decision here, and we're going to make sure that we select not attending or no, they're not attending. And then instead of having to recreate this or manually create another create records, I'm actually just going to clone this. So if you're not aware of this, if you highlight an element within your flow, and up here on the top left, you see that copy icon or duplicate, you can just click on that and it'll create an exact copy. And then if we double click into that, now we can make some changes. So the first change that I always make before I do anything else is go up here to the API name. We're going to delete that. And then if we update our label, I'm going to change that to is attending, and then click tab. You'll see it'll update the API name for you. Okay, and then the only other thing that we have to change on this now, if we scroll down, is the response. So instead of that saying not attending, we're now going to use our formula that we put together, the attending response text. So we're going to select that. And when we're done with that, click done. And now we can connect that final step here. Yes, they are attending. All right. So this actually brings us to our first point where we can actually test this and see if it's actually working. All right. So the way that we would do that, again, before you do anything, make sure you save. And then what I'm going to do is actually click on run. And that's going to actually open up another tab here. It'll actually run our flow in the screen. And it says, okay, the company, hey, Bill, the company picnic is coming up. Please provide us some details. And it says attending ? So if we were to select attending, it now presents us with our 2 other questions. And I'm going to bring 2 guests. And my favorite band is Green Day. All right, so I'll click next. It'll record your response. It'll just say your flow is finished. Now, if the flow really finished, what I should expect to see now is if we go back to our collected info tab that we have here, outside of setup, and I click refresh, I should see that response get logged here. So you can now see that we have 2021 company picnic for user Bill Kuehler, and the response is attending with 2 guests, and my favorite band is Green Day. Okay, so we know that the flow is actually working now. Now to check the negative part, to make sure that if we've already responded, that we don't go through all this logic, I'm actually just going to run it again. All right, so I'm gonna close that run that we just did. I'm going to click run, and I shouldn't be presented with anything. It should just go right to your flow is finished, and that's how we know that it's working. So before we connect this to the actual login process, I'm going to take just another pause here. If we have any questions, we can get them addressed now, and then we'll actually connect this so that the user is presented with this when they log in. So any questions here?
Hey, Bill, do you mind showing the 2 create record elements?
Yeah, sure. So if we go, we have an is attending here. So this is, we're creating 1 record using separate values. The record that we're going to create is of type collected info, and we're going to fill in the fields. The event is going to be that manually typed in 2021 company picnic. The user is the current logged in user, which is represented by that $user.id. And the response is going to be the attending response text. And that's the formula that we created that concatenates everything together.
And then you just clones that one, and then the next one just has 1 extra field?
No, so the same number of fields. So I actually cloned it the other way around, but that's okay. It's essentially the same thing on the not responding side, except instead of using our formula field, we're just putting in the text not attending. And we're doing that by, referencing that not attending variable that we have. Though if you wanted to, you could have just put in here not attending, and that would have done the same thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Now,
Bill,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I had a question
go
for you.
Sure.
So I'm getting an unhandled fault has occurred in this flow. So what would be the best way to kind of debug this or see where the problem is in this flow or any flow in general?
Yeah, so with a screen-based flow, it's actually pretty slick what we can do here. So I'm going to go back to my collected info, and I'm going to delete this response here just so that we can run through our flow again. And if we go back, and instead of actually clicking run, I'm going to save that one time. Instead of clicking run, I'm going to click debug this time. All right, now debug, it's nice in that when you click run, you'll actually get kind of the details as you're going through your flow over on the right side. So you can see we started the flow. We got the records to see if any existing records existed for responses. It failed to find any responses. So now it's going to bring us to our screen, right? So we got the current logged in user, and now we're sitting on the screen. So are you getting the error as soon as you tried to run it, or after you put in some answers and tried to save your answers? Like, were you getting an error before you even got to the screen, or only after you clicked on next? And if you're speaking, I can't hear you. Okay, and you guys can still hear me, right? Okay, got the thumbs up, good. Yeah, so I think if you were getting an error before you even got to this step, or before the screen even displayed, then that would point me towards, there's some issue with this first part before the screen. And if you put your responses in and you're getting some kind of error message, that would give you some kind of indication that there's an issue with the create step that we have. But in any case, if you're putting the details here through the debug mechanism, when you click next, you should be able to get to the details of where it failed over here on the right side. If you did it in run and you still got an error, at a minimum, you should get an email with the details about why the flow failed. Okay, so maybe what we'll do is we'll go through this last step of actually connecting this to the login mechanism, and then if anybody still has issues or they're getting some kind of messages, we can go through them in detail in a few minutes here. All right, so I'm going to go back here. Now, if you're like me, you probably have missed this step many times, but before we try to connect this to anything, I want to make sure that we click on activate, okay, so that it's actually activated. And now we're going to connect this so that when a user logs in, they see this screen. And the way that we do that, if we go back into Salesforce setup and over on the quick find, if you type in login, you'll see that there's a login flows option here. Okay. Now I already have one connected. I'm just going to delete that real quick. So when you land here, if you've never done this before, this is what your screen's going to look like. And what we want to do is click on new. And the type is going to be flow. You give it a name. So prompt user for some info, whatever you want to call that thing. The flow that you're going to select is whatever you named it when you saved. In this case, it's going to be demo login flow for me. So I'm going to select that. And now you got to specify who should actually receive this or who should see this when they log in. And this is done at the profile level. So I'm going to select for the license type is going to be the full Salesforce license type. And the profile, since I'm logged in as the standard playground user, it's going to be system administrator. All right, so I'm going to select that and I'm going to click save. Okay, so now the way this is set up, whenever a system administrator logs in, they're going to be presented with this flow. Okay, now to show you what this looks like at login, I'm actually going to go back here. I want to make sure we don't have any existing records here. So I'm going to delete this. And now I'm actually going to jump over, just to make it easy, I'm going to do this in Firefox. So I'm going to log in now as this user within Firefox. And what you'll see is that we're presented with our question. So we're going to say attending, yes. How many guests? I'm going to say 2. And favorite band, well, show my dork side here. Let's go Boston, right? And I click next. And now I just log in to Salesforce just like it was any other kind of login. For me, it just logs me into setup. But in any case, that response of that user logging in has now been recorded to our object. So again, if you think about the use cases here for when this might be useful, if you have some information that you want to present to your users, some key information. I saw one webinar through the, I want to say the automation hour, I think they had a use case where it was, returning to the company after COVID. You could have, people log in the morning, ask them questions like, are you getting symptoms? Are you achy? Are you coughing? Do you have a fever? So basically like a COVID questionnaire when they log in. There's all kinds of ways you can connect this to Apex and do multi-factor authentication and customizations that way. You could be instead of awesome admin, you could be awful admin, and have a person pick a number between 1 and 10. If they get it wrong, they have to keep going through until they get it right. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do, presenting your users with information or questioning them when they log in. So with that, I'm going to pause here and I'll open it up for questions. If anybody has any, or if you got stuck, we can go through in detail.
Bill,
Hey, Bill, sorry, you can go ahead, Ruby.
Okay. When I ran my flow, it just said flow complete. It never really showed up. Any idea?
Yeah, sure. So if would you mind maybe sharing your screen and we could just take a look and we can see where we might have gone wrong?
I'm having the same issue. I think the reason why, because earlier when we first started, you mentioned to deactivate one of these flows, right? The active flows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what causing the issue?
Well, it could be a few things. So,
Okay.
Robbie, you wanna share your screen and we'll take a look.
Yeah, I'm sharing it now.
Okay. So the first thing that I would like to do, let's check to see if you have any records that exist already. Because if you already recorded a response, it's going to go directly into the, you already did it. So from here, yeah, you could either refresh the whole browser or, yeah, let's try that again.
Let's say there's a problem. Let's see what I do here. Okay. So no
Okay,
edit.
so no items to display. Okay, so let's go into your flow and let's take a look here and see what could be going on here. All right, so you get to see if there's a response. So if you want to double click on your get records, that first one. All right, so we check to see user equals current logged in user, event is equal to 2021 company picnic. Looks perfect. All right, so you can cancel here. Did we find an existing response? So if you want to double click into that. Okay, so no existing response, so is null. Now, I think this is where you might have gone wrong. I think we
Yeah.
actually have this backwards, right?
And I actually went to change it and
Yeah, so I think that's where your problem is. So I would suggest the update your label. So yes, an existing response was found, and we know that an existing response was found because the get info part of it is null is false, right? So I would change your default outcome text as well to just say no response found or something like that.
okay.
Or not found, to be clear. And then you just want to make sure that you got the right one connected to the rest of the flow if you click done here. So you want to delete that. So if an existing response is found, we don't want to do anything. What we do want to do is if there was no response found, continue on with the logic. There you go. And then if you save that and then just go through the run or save as, I guess you would have to do here. Then you should be, oh, you don't have to do that. It'll actually increment it for you. Which is kind of slick.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just click save there. And now if you click run, it should actually take you to the screen, assuming no other issues later on. There you go.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay.
All right, now I think, Amar, you were having the same issue. Is that potentially what you were running into as well?
Yeah, that's correct. Now, yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
All right. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think the getting it right the first time in Flow, some people are lucky. Sometimes I have to re-walk through my logic, and especially when I'm on the phone with a customer and I'm building something for them kind of live on the call, walking through it together. What I find myself doing is, as we're going through the flow, I just try to talk out loud, kind of talk to logic, out loud. And I think that helps you kind of capture, some of those issues. So after we build it, just start at the beginning and just kind of talk through each step, open up each screen, make sure everything, looks like I'm saying it should be, right? So that kind of helps me troubleshooting some of these flows as we go through them. All right, any other questions or any other issues that folks are running into?
Yeah, hey Bill, I lost you there when we were talking about the debug.
Yeah.
But so I'm getting an error with the query I'm getting from finding the current logged in user. I was wondering, could you just share your get record process one more time on that one?
You beat me to it. I was going to ask you to share your get here. All right, there we go. So something like that. So
yeah, the one where you're find current logged in user.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
yeah, no,
this one here. There you go. So we're going to get all users where the ID is equal to the user.id.
Okay, so that is.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Let me share here.
There you go. And again, that step is probably optional. We probably didn't need that step, but let's just take a look to see why you might be getting that. Right. Can you scroll all the way to the top? All right, so we're going to get users where the user ID is equal to the user.id. And if you could just click into the field part of that and just delete that ID that you have there. And now type in ID for me if you can. And then scroll down to the actual ID field. And if you just click on that, okay, so nothing there. And then if you scroll down, you have only the first record automatically. Okay, so go ahead and click done here, and let's actually debug this. And let's just see if we can see that issue kind of in real time. See if we're getting a message. Yep, that looks all good. Okay, an unhandled exception. Let's see, because limit. So the error occurred from the flow. Tried to look up record, select ID from user where ID is equal to user ID, limit 1. You can invalid ID field, user.id. Okay, so let's go back to your flow. Let's the same thing that we just did with that ID. Let's do that same thing for the other side of the equation there as well. So let's go ahead and delete that. And now, yeah, go ahead and click into it. type in user, click on that, and then ID. Okay, you go ahead and click on there. And then just to make sure, go ahead and save it as well, or do save as, and then we'll try to debug it one more time. Okay.
All right, there we
Yeah.
go.
So I think I didn't really look closely at the user ID, but I'm wondering if we just had $user.id without the brackets and the exclamation point. I think that might have been where we were going wrong.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Any other questions or anybody else having error messages or concerns with that one? Okay.
Well, is there a way to assign this to more than one profile at a time? That seems pretty cumbersome.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was actually thinking the exact same thing, and believe it or not, I haven't had a chance to look into that. But I think here, if I just share my screen real quick, what you're referring to is the clunkiness of creating this flow. And let's just say you had 57 profiles at your org, and you wanted to assign this flow to run for each one of them. Would you literally have to go in here and create 57 line items here? Based on my understanding, I think the answer is yes. Now, I'm sure that there's got to be a better way to do it. Maybe it's a permission set thing. I don't know. I haven't really researched it. But yeah, I absolutely agree that if you had to do it through this screen, that is extremely, extremely cumbersome to do it that way. So, and I just wanted to test here, if we selected just the license, maybe can you do it just based on the license? No, I guess you have to enter a profile. All right, so just to explore the permission set option, is there a way just to create a permission set for this login flow and then assign it to your users? I'm just going to create a new one for right now. So test, do license. Do we not have Salesforce here? Just leave blank. So is there a login flow, permission execute flows? Yeah, so maybe you do. I'll definitely take that as a takeaway just to see, but if that's what you have to do is create an individual one for each profile, that is quite clunky. Does anybody on the call know if you can do that in a more generic way? Apply it to multiple users in different profiles without having to create a separate line item for each one of them. Okay, yeah, like I said, I'll take a look to see if there's another way of doing that.
Could you create a group?
A group for like profiles? Because I mean, it literally asks you to select the license type and then the profile. Yeah, so I don't know. But I'll definitely research that and see if there's a better way to do it. So just for fun here, Salesforce login flow.
Just did the same thing.
Multiple profiles, just to see if there's a allow to select. Okay, there's an idea exchange option in there.
I don't see anything. I've been looking through a lot of these links that I Googled, and
yeah, I think just so that we all have it, if we want to, I don't want to say spam the idea exchange, but there's the idea that somebody had posted for that very thing. Okay, any other questions?
Hey, Bill, can you remind us or me where we can find the recording later on?
Yeah, sure. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that the recording is posted within the Trailblazer community, the military Trailblazer community. And I think, yeah, I'll also post it on like the LinkedIn. I'll put it as a comment there where you can access it from there. Usually what I do is I upload it as a private YouTube video just so that it's easy to share and across multiple platforms and whatnot. So once I get it uploaded, I'll post it anywhere that I posted that this thing is happening. I'll post a recording there as well. Okay, and I'll also post the slides if anybody needs those as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is setting this login flow aside. If anybody has any additional questions, by all means, you can ask those, but I'll just open up in general, kind of like our standard office hours. Does anybody have any other questions or anything just in general that they were looking for help with, whether login flows or otherwise?